Warren, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about it.
This is our typical Friday Inventor interview series, and it's an honor to have you on here.
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to give a minute for everybody to, look at plenty of participants joining in now. And a quick overview, I think, Warren, of your background. You had an idea and you turned it into a product known as a BetterBlocks. And it ended up becoming the first children's toy building block system to actually give Lego a run for their money and compete successfully with Lego. So, which is an icon of the toy building industry. Jenny, let's play a quick video. I see it's now a minute after noon. So this is a video kind of with an overview of your product for those that aren't familiar with it. And play it with audio, please.
Really do love playing with them.
Warren showed us a new and unique feature coming with the relaunch that makes BetterBlocks one step ahead of all other toy building blocks.
The original BetterBlocks snapped together so well that they could be a little tricky to pull apart, like any good toy block. We've now developed the world's only easy release system for toy building blocks. Kids just squeeze the sides and the blocks just pop apart. And of course, these new BetterBlocks are compatible with the hundreds and millions of BetterBlocks that are already out there.
What a great story. The inventor also told Channel 7 that they will be relaunching the many types of blocks that were popular before, including bigger BetterBlocks, glow-in-the-dark blocks, color-changing blocks, and more. Kids everywhere will be happy to see the new BetterBlocks, now better than ever. For Channel 7, I'm Alicia Smith.
I love that clip because it shows, as an inventor, innovation never stops, right? It's not as if your original BetterBlocks had sales of $45 million and over 2 million kits are sold.
Yeah.
And many people would say, gosh, let's leave well enough alone. Who needs glow in the dark building blocks and quick release building blocks? Which that video is phenomenal because you see the child there just barely squeeze them, and it's almost like it shoots the block apart. So I love it. But we kind of started with the end in mind. After there's a lot of success. What I'd like to do now is go way back in time to when you were, I was going to say, a guy playing in a shed, but really you tell us about your start and how it was growing up and what kinds of toys kind of inspired you.
Thanks for the introduction, John, and thank you again for inviting me on here because, I just love sharing my journey with inventors because hopefully they may learn something to make their journey easier. And as you alluded to, it's okay to see the end result and all the glory, but sometimes it wasn't always like that. And I was fortunate because both my parents were creative people. And my father was an engineer in engineering, and my mum was actually a dressmaker, and they were quite well known throughout Australia here for their creativity and what they did and the businesses they had. And I kind of just fell into it, really. I like playing out in my dad's backyard shed, making stuff. That was kind of what I did. That's how I grew up as a kid. Unfortunately, when I was 9 years old, my dad had a stroke. And his business closed down, and a couple of years later, my mum passed away. So it was in my teenage years, I was left to my own a lot. And I used to love just making stuff out in my dad's backyard shed. And I remember my first invention was called a shuffle bug. And, I thought it was a really cool thing. It was a cool toy that people loved. It was a ride-on toy and kids loved it, right? But, I was in my early 20s by that stage. And I thought I knew about business and inventing, and I got a team of us together.
You know everything at 20, right?
I tell you, when I was 20, I knew everything. The older I get, the more I realize the less that I actually know.
That's right.
But what happened was the end result of that. I had a great product that we never successful. It was never successful, and I wound up $100,000 in debt. And I was going, wow, that didn't quite go out as planned. That didn't quite work out as planned. So I had to get myself out of debt and do something. The only thing I really knew how to do was really invent stuff. And I can remember this really clearly. We're over at the Nuremberg Toy Fair with my shuffle bug. And I was speaking to a couple of salespeople who were friends of mine, and we're outside the Lego stand. And they said, Warren, they said, you're an inventor. Why don't you come up with something so we can compete with Lego? And I thought, oh yeah, and to be honest, I never thought much more about it. But I came back to Adelaide, which is my hometown, and I was driving down the road past one of our main sports stadiums, and all of a sudden it hit me. Why not build a building block that moved, like Lego, like BetterBlocks? Why not make a block that moved? And it all started from there. The easy part was having the idea. The tough gig was actually turning the idea into a product, making it work, and then actually selling it and making it commercialized. And as you alluded to, like I was a really introverted guy. Like I found it tough to speak with people. Like my business consisted of Warren and Warren and Warren, and my best friends were Warren. Like it was me, and that was it. So to get out there and try and sell BetterBlocks and get it off the ground was a real challenge for me. But what I did was, getting back to, I had the idea for BetterBlocks, but I had an idea. So what? I didn't know really the clipping system, how to join them together. I hadn't really worked out how to do it. I was $100,000 in debt, didn't really have a lot of money. Didn't have a market, I didn't have a marketing team or a manufacturer or nothing, but I thought, I've got to give this a go. And what I did was I spent about 2 or 3 years actually looking around Australia to find some backers and never found anyone. And they all loved the product, but no one wanted to be involved. And this is how fate or the universe often works. I was talking to my sister's boyfriend, John Wilkie. Now, John Wilkie was a cabinet maker. It had nothing to do with patents, nothing to do with product development, nothing to do with business, toy business. And he said to me, Warren, why don't you ring up a mate of mine in America? He's doing pretty well at direct marketing. His name was Kelvin Claney. He said, ring up Kelvin. He's doing pretty well at direct marketing. He might just be interested. Now, the end result of that offhanded comment was I rang up Kelvin, and in the end, we did a deal, and we sold $45 million worth of product and 600 million blocks. So it was it's amazing how the universe gives us the answers that we need in totally unexpected ways.
But guys, so give me an idea, give our viewers an idea of timing also. First of all, this is not a story of someone that started with nothing and had $45 million of sales. You started $100,000 in debt. So that's it's not like you started from ground zero. You were already.
I was way below zero, mate. I was way below zero. And it's a good point. What I learned was that it took me it was just under 3 years before I found Kelvin. When I'd found Kelvin, I sold a part of my business to fly over to America to meet Kelvin and to show him the blocks in person. But the big catch with that was like I was $100,000 in debt. My business was just keeping me afloat, and I'd sold a chunk of it. So if I came back and didn't have a deal, I was, I'm really below. So what I did was I went across to America and I met with Kelvin. And here's what Kelvin, this is over a breakfast over grits, right? We're having grit, and I've only ever had grits once for breakfast, and that was my only time. And Kelvin said to me, he said, look, Warren, he said, I like what you got. He said, here's what I'm prepared to do. I'm prepared to put $30,000 into the project. I'll produce a direct response commercial, and we'll test it. And if it works, we'll do a deal. And if it doesn't work, we'll shake hands and walk away. Now we sketched a few, and this is no joking, we sketched a few key points on royalties and things on a napkin. And I went back to Australia. That was what I had. Now, Kelvin produced a commercial and it did work. And so consequently of that, we did the deal, and it went on to produce BetterBlocks. We had glow in the dark blocks and a whole range of other products. But that process once we'd done the deal, that process, we were in the marketplace within 3 months, which was really quite quick for a product. But it just goes to show how, like, if you keep on going, when you get the right people in place, like I had Kelvin in place, I had a manufacturer in New Zealand we brought into place really quickly. We had the direct response commercial people brought into place really quickly. Like, it really escalated really fast. And that was a blessing, and it was also a curse. Because what happened for me was, like I said, I was a really introverted guy, struggled to speak with people. And in 12 months, I went to be part of this quite successful international business. And to be honest, I kind of felt right out of my depth. But one of the things I had going for me, this is what I often say to people, about how successful BetterBlocks was that I had one thing, I was persistent. Like, I was afraid of speaking with people and doing all these things, but I was persistent and I'd never give up. And on my journey of BetterBlocks, the interesting thing I found was that, like, I never considered BetterBlocks a fantastic idea. Like, I thought it was a pretty good idea, but I saw many far smarter people than me. And I was, I'm just an ordinary guy, and people had far better inventions than me and patented inventions than me that never got them off the ground. And what I realized was it was because they gave up. And you see, I had this dream. I knew that BetterBlocks was a great product, and somehow I had to make it successful. So it was really about, to me, the key to successful inventing and anything in life really is about having the goal, and you just got to keep on going. And if you have like obstacles like I did about speaking and stuff, well, you kind of just keep persisting, and eventually you get better at it. So that was really the driving force of how BetterBlocks got off the ground. And it was kind of, a couple of keys as to why it was successful. And what I see, like, everybody's got perseverance, and everybody has a dream of some sort, but it's a matter of taking some action. And that was one of the reasons BetterBlocks was successful. And the other thing was that I had a great team around me. It's like I was an inventor, and I didn't pretend to be like, I knew the value of business, and I knew the value of patents, and I knew the value of marketing, but that's not what I did. So what I did was I found people who were really good at what they did and brought them on as a team. And that's why BetterBlocks was successful. Like, it wasn't successful really because I was that clever, or because, like I said, BetterBlocks was a fantastic idea. And I think it's a pretty good idea. It was really successful because I had a team of really good people around me who loved the product. And that was another thing that it was another insight into what I found to be successful, is to try and work with good people. And you'd probably find this, John, as well, like with your business and your customers, like when you're working with good people, the game's easier, and you have challenges, and you just kind of keep on going. So yeah, that was BetterBlocks was a big eye opener for me. It was I learned a lot really about inventing, and also about myself as a person, and what I needed to do, to lift my game.
Right. So here's, one of the things that I think makes your story so inspiring is that this isn't Apple with a new product. There's some huge multinational corporation. And it's funny, I talk about Apple because today they are a huge corporation, but we forget that at one point it was Steve Jobs in his garage. Yeah. I mean, all large companies, Amazon, Jeff Bezos was just one person with this idea to sell books out of his basement. But today, your start with this first idea, and I speak to so many inventors, and you talk about perseverance, but also taking those initial steps are sometimes the hardest. Yes. And I've had spoken to inventors who are hesitating to take that first step because it might involve travel of a couple hours, or a drive, or even a flight. Tell us about how far Australia, your initial meeting was in Florida. How long did it take you to get from Australia to Florida to have that meeting?
Day and a half. So
any inventors out there that have an opportunity, I don't want to hear, oh, it's too far, or, it's one thing to say, I don't have the money, but not only did Warren not have the money, but he was $100,000 in debt. Like you had to borrow money on borrowed money to
Pretty
fly to
much.
Florida and take this chance. So sometimes it, and you had no
It's
guarantee that it
no,
would be where this meeting would even end up.
no, I just knew I had to take a chance. And like you said, like America to me, like it's on the other side of the world. Like I did fly halfway across the world, and like it's 1:46 in the morning here for me. 1:46 on Saturday morning for me, and that's the kind of challenges that.
Well, you're saying that's what time it is right now.
That's what time it is right now. It's 1:40. So if you want to know what happens on Saturday, ask me, all right? I'll be able to tell you. But yeah, but it's kind of but that's the kind of challenges that we all face. Everyone has their challenges of different types. But it's not so much the challenges. It's what you do to overcome them. And it's not even about if you really overcome them successfully. If you have a go, I found if you have a go, people are going to help you out. And if you trip up, they're going to kind of pick you up a bit and off you go again. Because, like I say, as an inventor, most things I do don't work because we're experimenting to get to where we want to go. So I'm used to the fact, well, you have a go, and if it works, it's great. And if it doesn't work, well, that's great too, because it just brings you one step closer to where you want to go. And it's like you were saying about inventing. It's about taking that first step, and it doesn't matter what it is, but it's about taking the first step and then taking another one and taking another one and another one and another one, and just keep going.
Wow, that's inspiring. Tell us about, did you have much knowledge about patents? Because I know this isn't, at the time when you filed for patents on BetterBlocks. Or even trademark. No. And I love the name BetterBlocks. And I saw an interview of you somewhere else, and someone had asked you how did you come up with the name BetterBlocks? And you said, because they're better.
that's part of the story. The reason that's the person who came up with the name BetterBlocks was not. I'd love to claim it was me, right? My name was BrickoBlocks, but it was Kelvin's wife he was the direct marketing guy. It was Robin that came up with the name BetterBlocks, and it's exactly that, because she said, Warren or Kelvin, these blocks are better, so we've got to call them BetterBlocks, and that's how the name came about. I was a bit, can we really call them BetterBlocks? But that's what they did. Wow. And so that was the
name is trademark, right? You have the name protected.
Yeah, the name is trademarked and it's protected. So we've got the name and the patents. I was really fortunate here in Adelaide to come across a patent attorney who gave me some of the best advice that I'd had. See, I didn't really have any money, and I knew to file full patents, and that was to be honest, was out of my league. Mm-hmm. But what Ken said to me, he said, look, Warren, he said, why don't you do this? Why don't you file a provisional patent application, right? Just file a PPA that gives you protection, and you can speak to people, and it makes sure you get, you kind of, it covers your rights. And it was a minimal cost. So what I did is I got into the patent game for a minimal cost. And then when I'd sold the idea of BetterBlocks, it was Kelvin who came in and funded the full-on patents. But for Ken to tell me that key step, that gentle step to get in, right, to get into the patent game, that was gold. Like I was so appreciative of Ken to tell me that, because he could have said anything, and he was a patent attorney, and I would have believed him. But but he was really genuinely, he liked inventors, and he was, gave the best advice he could.
The provisional patent is an amazing thing. Only the United States, of all the countries of the world, only the United States permits this type of patent. The important thing is that it still has to meet the full requirements of enablement. Yes. So it's not like you can file a piece of junk and get
No.
It's kind of like if you've ever played the game bingo. Like, they don't just give you the prize because you yell bingo. You're gonna have to show your card, and somebody's gonna review it and make sure that your boxes spell out the words bingo. So provisional patents are the same way, but if they're done right, it helps with cash flow. And as
Absolutely.
We've kind of gone into, cash flow is critical back then, because not only did you not have any money, but you now had a flight and hotel and who knows what other expenses to cover to fly out here, have that meeting.
Yeah.
How long after you went back was it before you knew that there was going to be a deal? Are we talking weeks, months?
It took a couple of months for Kelvin really to produce a commercial, to test it, and just it took a couple of months before we signed an agreement. But a couple of months, I was happy with that, because I was once the commercial worked and we had a deal and had to finalize it. I was, that was a lot of weight off my shoulders, to be honest. Plus I had a daughter. My daughter was born at about the same time, so I had all these things happening. I had all these cool things happening in my life. It was excellent.
Right. So at any time have there been any offers from Lego or anybody, large toy companies, to buy BetterBlocks? And tell us about that experience, and how do you, as an inventor, how do you handle that? Is there a part of you that feels that you've put a part of yourself, so much of yourself, into this product that you don't want to part with it?
Well, actually, that's a good point. When BetterBlocks was at its height of its sales, we actually approached Lego to see if they wanted to buy us out. And here was Lego's attitude. They said, "We're the biggest and we're the best, and you can do what you do. We don't care." They weren't interested in buying us out. They, and I kind of, admired them for that. They didn't stuff us around. They just, "No, we're the biggest, we're the best. You're never going to." And their attitude was, "You're never going to compete with us. Do what you do." It was too different from Lego. From a Lego block, it was too different for them. And as I say to people, I'd be very surprised if somewhere in Lego's development they haven't got a BetterBlock in there somewhere, but they just said, "No, this is too different from what we do," and they've just kind of put it aside. So that was about the only time. But we I've always loved BetterBlocks. And there was a time when it had run its natural course, I kind of let it sit for a while, because I wanted to get into teaching and share my knowledge that I'd learned. And I kind of left it. And it was only just recently that I thought, it's time to resurrect BetterBlocks again. Because every now and again, I come across people who say, "Look, I've still got the BetterBlocks that we bought 20 years ago. I've still got them, and my grandkids still play with them." And it always amazes me. So what I've done is I've done a joint venture with a guy called Matt Anderson in America, and another guy called Patrick Smith, who runs a tool room, got a tool shop, and or a tool making business, and we're re-releasing BetterBlocks, because I learned a few lessons about marketing and BetterBlocks. And one of the things I learned was that Kelvin was a really good direct marketing person. But when it came to selling into retail, that's not really what he did. So we never consequently cracked it. We got into retail, but we never really cracked it in retail. And direct marketing, we were the longest direct selling product in America. We sold by direct selling for like 10 years, and that was unheard of in America.
Yeah, wow.
But so I learned that just because you can sell on TV doesn't mean that you can sell into retailers. So when I've done a joint venture this time with people, I've looked for different things, and it's simply because of experience of what worked and what, like, I knew the power of marketing, but also knew I needed a business person who was capable of getting into the retail stores. So I just look for slightly different things these days. And it comes by experience, Well, that's how we learn our lessons.
Right. And one of our viewers, Brian, he has a question about, and now that you've had more experience in getting your ideas in front of right people, and the question is, how do you do that? How do you determine who to pitch it to? And I know you initially it was kind of a bit of fortuitous luck, which a lot of inventors, that it ends up when you look back and there's like, oh, you don't know which avenue is going to work. And everyone looks at the one thing that worked, but they're like, what about the 9,000 other avenues that didn't work? To talk to us a little bit about that. Like, what advice would you have for an inventor today?
Well, to be honest, right, I pitch it to anyone that I thought would be interested. And if they weren't interested, I'd ask them, well, do you have any suggestions? It's like with toys, you can start off with the big toy companies. You can start off with the toy manufacturers, and you can work your way. Like these days, LinkedIn is a priceless resource to find people who work in those companies. And, you know, and I always find, like I always approach the sales marketing people, because they're always, you know, they're on these platforms. They're always willing to speak with you. They're always willing to help you out. There's a lot of resources out there, if you just have a look, that will definitely really help you get your product off the ground. But you know, I kind of didn't have those resources. And here's what I realized is that a good invention comes from the outside in. Like I saw Lego and I thought, yeah, I'll do something different. But a successful inventor comes from the inside out. It's like what I said with my story. It was only because I was persistent and I learned along the way. And that's all stuff that comes from inside of you. And that's kind of what I focus on as well. Like I've probably spent more money and more time developing me as a person than I have inventing products, because ultimately I find that companies kind of invest in you, not some, you know, you've got to be a person they can work with, because you can have good ideas, and if companies don't like you, like they don't want your invention. So it's a lot of it for me was always about developing me as a person, and that's what it's one of the things I focus on. So I focus on the product and the people side of it.
Okay. Well, one thing that one interview that I saw once of Jeff Bezos, and I thought it was fascinating. And they interviewed him and asked, what was the one thing that he was the most proud of, or the biggest accomplishment with Amazon. And Jeff Bezos said that it was when he was able to hire somebody, his first employee, so he did not have to take all those books to the post office himself in his own truck. So I'm going to end with our final question and ask that of you. And that is, what would you say is the one time, and maybe it's a moment that you knew that BetterBlocks had made it. You're like, okay, this is no longer if it's going to be successful, or maybe it was some small win. In Jeff Bezos's interview, I expected it to be something huge. Like I thought it would be when he took over Whole Foods or some humongous acquisition, and didn't expect him to go all the way back to the first hire. But tell us about yours. It could be anything. It could be something recent, maybe glow in the dark.
Here's what made all the hard work for BetterBlocks for me worthwhile. Kelvin used to run every now and again, Kelvin would run an event in Florida where kids and parents could bring their models in, and we'd run competitions, you know, for the best type of model and the best glow in the dark model, different models. And I wasn't there at this one. So this was the day that he did that, right? So all these parents and kids were bringing their models, proudly showing them. And this dad came up to Kelvin and said, and he thanked Kelvin. He said, look, you know, I'm so grateful that you brought BetterBlocks out. And Kelvin thought, well, you know, this guy's pretty sincere about this. There's a bit more going on here. So Kelvin asked him why. So, you know, why are you so grateful that we brought BetterBlocks out? Because he said this. He said, this is the first time I've sat down with my son in 4 years and I played with him for half a day. And for me, inventing is all about touching people's lives. And to hear that, and that story still almost brings a tear to my eye. And this is like quite a lot of years later, because I touched someone's life. And that's my story of BetterBlocks. Like all of a sudden, all the hard work and all the rest of it, I thought, wow, I've done good for someone.
The fact that for a child, it was several
Absolutely.
Hours of captivating. That's amazing.
Spending time with his dad. That was
getting me choked up, and just hearing that about you. And you've always had you have a love for children and inspiring them. And in fact, we had spoken earlier about the girl in your background. I know I promised that last one was the last question, but I can't end without covering your entrepreneurial program for kids. So tell us about that and how you're giving back.
Well, yeah, we're developing an entrepreneurial program for kids where we show, because kids are naturally creative, and what happens is what I've seen is educated out of them. So we've developed an entrepreneurial creative program for kids just to inspire them to have like they've always got ideas, but inspire them to keep going. and seeing if they're going to lead somewhere, and you know, just get them to keep going. It's like I said, it's taking a step. And you know, I'm starting to do more work with adults and companies too, because inventors, like I said, it's about getting bigger and about developing yourself. And I love working with inventors to get them to get bigger, and companies as well. So it's about, for me, it's about sharing and to be as great as we can be, you know, like and having a go at it. You know, you got to have a go.
I love that. And especially when you talk about developing yourself, because, you know, knowledge is important. And as a patent attorney, I can't knock the importance of learning about patents and trademarks and copyright, but all the knowledge in the world, if you don't take that step, you don't take the action, it wouldn't help. Like, had you not purchased a ticket and jumped on a plane and flew 22, 23 hours to Florida, we would never, you know, who knows where BetterBlocks would be. So all that knowledge is helpful, but it's that action, that step of, you know, of not knowing the answer, not knowing if it's going to succeed, but doing it anyway. Brings chills to me, even thinking about an inventor taking that step.
Absolutely, John, and thank you so much for saying that, because that's what it's all about. Like my view on it these days, like people talk about the information age, but to me it's beyond that. Like information these days is like it's cheap. It's the ability to apply that information and do something with it as the next generation. And you summed it up beautifully. It's, you know, like knowledge is there. It's about what are we going to do with it? And it's just about having a go, you know?
That's funny, John. And I'll end with this quote by John Ruskin. And I promised everyone a half-hour interview. And a lot of our viewers are kind of zoomed out in this pandemic. So we'll end after this. But John Ruskin's a famous English writer, and his the famous quote by him is, "It's not how much you know or what you believe that makes a difference in the long run, it's what you do." And that's
absolutely
that hits home.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Again, Warren, wonderful to speak to you. I would love to have you back. I do a virtual inventors, I do a real inventors workshop once a year, but from Australia, I can see that's a trek. But during this pandemic, we'll do it virtual, and I'd love to have you attend that as well.
Thank you very much, John. I'd be honored I'd be honored to be part of it. Thank you very much for having me. And thank everybody for listening. It's appreciated.
Thanks.